Hola chicos, today we're going to be talking about el verbo tener. Now, you have heard about the verb tener before, but now we're going to go into details with a couple other things. The verb tener is a verb to have, and here are the conjugations of the verb. Yo tengo, tú tienes, él tiene, ella tiene, usted tiene, nosotros tenemos, vosotros tenéis, ellos tienen, ellas tienen, and ustedes tienen. Now you should have your handout out for the verb tener. If you were not able to print it, then just go ahead and write this down in your libreta. If you're able to print the handout, then you're taking notes on it directly. Now there's some expressions that we need to memorize with the verb tener. These are very important expressions and they're idiomatic expressions. They always go with the verb tener. And some of these ones you've used in the past, so now we're just going to talk a little bit more about them. And so we have tener años, which means to be whatever years old, and this is when we used to say tengo 15 años or tengo 12 años or whatever age. Tener mucho calor or tener calor, to be very hot. Tener mucho cuidado, to be very careful. Tener frío o tener mucho frío, to be very cold. Tener mucha hambre, to be very hungry. Tener miedo o tener mucho miedo, to be very afraid of or scared. Tener que we've used for conversations. And we use the verb tener que and then an infinitive to say that you have to do a particular activity. Then we have tener prisa, to be in a big hurry. Tener razón, to be right. No tener razón, to be wrong. Tener sed o tener mucha sed, to be very thirsty. Tener mucho sueño, to be very sleepy. Tener mucha suerte, to be very lucky. And then we have tener ganas de, which is to be in the mood for. Now here's the thing. These are idiomatic expressions because technically they don't translate the same from English to Spanish. If you notice in English we say I am 14 years old, but in Spanish we're actually saying I have 14 years. So we just have to memorize that when we want to say this kind of expressions in Spanish, we're going to use the verb tener. And that's a very important part of all of this. So go ahead and write them in your handout. In the handout, I'm giving you the Spanish one, and you need to just write the English one. Again, if you did not print it out, then just go ahead and write it down. So you can pause the video here if you need to. All right, so let's talk about this expression. I love this expression, tener ganas de. This is a very common expression as a native speaker. It means to be in the mood for or to feel like doing something. So, for example, we can say tengo ganas de leer libros el fin de semana. I feel like reading books this weekend, or I'm in the mood to read books this weekend. Or I can also use it in a negative sense to express that I don't feel like doing something. So no tengo ganas de hacer tarea en la clase de inglés. I don't feel like doing homework in English class. So these are very common expressions that we use as native speaker to talk about when we feel like we want to do something or when we don't feel like we're in the mood. All right, then we have the verb tener que, which we've been using all year with activities like at the end of conversation as an excuse. We say tengo que estudiar or tengo que trabajar or whatever. Well, tener que translates to saying that you have to do something, like an activity or an obligation. Tengo que estudiar para la prueba de español. We can also use it in a negative sense and say like that we don't have to do something. No tengo que hacer tarea en la clase de inglés. I don't have to do homework in English class. Now, what I want you to do is look at the picture and I want you to write a few sentences with one of the tener expressions. So you have to go back and look at those tener expressions and look at something that you could write. So in this case, the subject is los gatitos. And of course, you have to conjugate the verb tener. You cannot say los gatitos tener. You have to conjugate los gatitos first with the verb tener and then use one of the tener expressions. Now I'm going to give you an example. And here I'm looking at the kittens. And the kittens could be cold or they could be sleepy. So I could say something like los gatitos tienen frío. So see, I conjugated the verb tener. Or I could say los gatitos tienen sueño. So again, you're going to conjugate that verb, but you have to use one of those tener expressions, so you have to kind of get creative. So each one of these pictures is going to give you the subject, and you're going to come up with one of your tener expressions to complete the sentence. And I want you to write this down in your libreta. Remember, guys, I'm not there to make you do it and check this with you, but I really need you to work on this so that we can make sure that you're learning it. So let's look at this one. Carlos. Pause it, pause the video, write your sentence, and then I will come up with one of the sentences you could say. Carlos tiene sed, or Carlos tiene mucha sed. Now notice that we say mucha sed, and that's because the word sed, la sed, means thirst, and it's a feminine, so that's why mucho would be mucha in this case. So Carlos tiene mucha sed. Raquel. Raquel tiene miedo. Los profesores tienen suerte. O tienen mucha suerte. And again, mucha has to be feminine because suerte is a feminine noun. Ricardo. Ricardo tiene prisa. Rosalba tiene mucho sueño. Now, mucho is used there because sueño is masculine. Octavio. Octavio tiene mucha hambre. Mi madre y yo tenemos cuidado. Carlos y Sandra tienen calor. All right, chicos. So start studying those tener expressions. Make sure that you complete this. Tomorrow we're going to be doing an activity to review the verb tener, and then tomorrow you're also going to be working on something special to work on that vocab for the tener expressions. All right, chicos. Adiós. Hasta mañana.